What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 57 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. This is episode 2 of our off-season ranking series where we go back and just kind of rank the best players from the 2025 season in each category. Last time we did the top 10 scorers in the league. Today we're going to be doing our top 10 playmakers in the league. Sean, how we feeling about this playmakers list, man?
Oh, we are definitely not feeling terrible. I actually do feel like a tiny bit better.
Okay.
Towards the end of finishing my list, but we'll see. I'll probably hate
it. This has been 2 weeks in the making since the scorers list. Scorers, I feel like, is a more easily definable, like, you just put the ball in the basket. How efficiently do you do it? Can you get your game off against different types of defenses? Are you versatile? Things like that. With playmaking, it's so much harder to actually identify what it is to make a play. And that's kind of where I want to start this conversation. What were the things you look for, whether that's in the statistics or on film, that's like, okay, this is contributing to your value as a playmaker?
So I think it's a few different things. I think I do take account for overall gravity and what a single action involving you creates for the what impact that has on the opposing team defensively and what advantages can you create off of that. I don't think this is a spoiler. Like a Steph Curry off-ball action, it accounts for his overall gravity and how that impacts the team's offensive flow and how it disrupts the team's defense. Specifically, I think the versatility. If we're specifically talking about passing reads, versatility of passing reads could be a bump up depending on the player. I think how efficient you are as a playmaker matters. The types of turnovers you're having. How turnover prone potentially are you, or are you a guy that maybe never turns the ball over, but is a guy that's maybe a lower volume assist guy, but you never turn the ball over? I think that in that scenario can actually work out in your benefit. We talk a lot about a few guys in the league that one of them actually is probably a high volume assist guy, low volume turnover guy, but the other ones that we've talked about are some elite usage guys. Maybe not going to have, the 11 assist nights on a consistent basis, but they don't turn the ball over, especially in the regular season. And then, so gravity, versatility, the different reads you can make. Can you make the basic reads even sometimes? Like, you can kind of get knocked a little bit or just bumped up. And then you got to go a little bit metric-based here, too. So, a little bit. But yeah, that's for me at least.
Yeah, for me, I actually think we differ a little bit. I agree with everything you said. I'm just going to kind of add to it a little bit. My whole thing with playmaking, and maybe this is a flawed way of looking at it, this is just kind of how I define the word. I'm sure most people watching won't even agree with this. It's literally everything that goes into creating the best possible shot for your teammate. So that could mean the pace of the game, slowing down the game or speeding it up. It could mean setting a really good screen should contribute to someone's playmaking value because you then create an advantage for the ball handler, or even like an off ball. Like, let's take Steph for an example.
So Draymond Green's going to be in Bro's top 5.
Exactly.
No, but 18 illegal screens a night he sets.
For example, using Steph's like gravity as an example, when he comes off a screen, not only does the threat of his movement shooting force 2 to the ball, that screen has to land. That screen has to land in order for the second defender to have to jump out. If Looney sets a terrible screen, that defender never loses Steph and he's able to stay attached over the top. Looney lands a hard screen, that forces the first reaction. Then you need the passer, the guy with the ball in his hands while Steph's running around, which is usually Draymond or maybe it's Jimmy this year, who then has to hit the slip or hit Steph in the right spot to then make an extra pass. There's a lot that goes into making the game easier for your teammate. That's pretty much what I'm trying to define with playmaking. And obviously different types of playmaking have different types of value. For example, what you talked about, if you draw a double and you skip it to the weak side corner and that's a 40% shooter, that is about as valuable as it gets. Or if I draw 2 and I hit the lob man and it's an easy dunk, that's about as valuable as it gets. I do dock guys for maybe needing more connectors, like again using Steph as the example. Rarely ever will you see him draw 2 in the high pick and roll and then make the skip pass. It's usually like, okay, I'm going to hit my short roll guy. Then that guy's going to connect the offense and make that extra pass. So I do think the ability to leverage your own scoring gravity into immediate shots is one of the most valuable things a playmaker can do. But even the more subtle things, like for example, obviously, just like the scorers list, I'm very playoff centric with this. You have to be able to create shots for your teammates against different types of playoff defenses. And I think one thing we see in the playoffs that we don't see in the regular season is very intentional scheming for every little weakness. So a lack of a general offensive flaw goes a long way for a playmaker. Using another, I'm not even going to think of a player, but just an example. If you're a really bad 3-point shooter, chances are you're not getting defended when you don't have the ball in the 3-point line, which then mucks up the spacing for the rest of your team. And it's not like a direct playmaking type of thing. It's more of an indirect negative effect on your team. Whereas if you're Klay Thompson, no matter what, there's going to be a defender glued to you on the 3-point line, which then creates space and makes it easier for a team to score. So going back to the word playmaking, I don't think it's necessarily just a guy directly making a play. Just anything that happens on offense to improve the quality of your team's possession. And the way I kind of like framed it is go back to our scorers list, right? Look at every player in the league. If you kept everything the same, but just on the box score, turned their scoring to 0 points, 0 shot attempts, who would be the most valuable offensive players? It's kind of the way I like to frame it.
Yeah. I think that's...
There's a lot that goes into it. It's definitely not like the traditional scope of how people value playmaking, but I think my list will prove to be decently in line with what you and most people probably define playmaking as. So let's just get into the players then. If you have nothing to add, let's talk about, or actually real quick, injury omissions. Again, just like the scores list, you had to play 41 or more games. I don't really think there was anyone on the cusp of that. Like with scores, we ran into Embiid, Zion, Kawhi. I don't think there's anyone like that for playmakers. So should be pretty good. Were there any just kind of like soft omissions that you didn't heavily consider, but were worthy of a mention?
We'll go Giannis Dame. I mean Giannis Tatum.
Giannis Tatum. They're spoiled it. Dame's in the top 5. Giannis Tatum. I think Tatum is a pretty underrated playmaker. Just really good at making those drive and kick reads. Can do some spread pick and roll stuff. Really good skip passer. And then Giannis, of course, it's just the downhill. I'm gonna draw 5 defenders to the paint, and I'm gonna spray it out to shooters, and we're just gonna get corner 3 after corner 3 after corner 3. In that same line of thinking, I had a few guys that I like lightly considered, and they're in that same mold of score first, but also can leverage that into really nice opportunities for the guys around them. I think Donovan Mitchell is a pretty good example. He gets tunnel vision at times. That's kind of the drawback with him. But in terms of just the versatility of passes he can make while pressuring the defense at multiple levels creates a lot of offense. Same thing for Booker. His ability to pressure the defense at multiple levels, the way he pushes pace, also some of that off-ball playmaking we talked about you get with Booker. And then the guy that I think a lot of people will overlook is Anthony Edwards, specifically what he was doing in the playoffs, and even more specifically what he was doing against OKC. When OKC just started playing this super aggressive paint defense, putting everyone in his driving lanes, and time again he gets 2 feet in the paint and sprays it out to the corner. I think Ant had a really, really impressive run as a playmaker in the playoffs. But ultimately, I had 14 guys that I really heavily considered for a top 10 spot.
You had 14 guys, you said?
I had 14.
I had 13, I think. Maybe 14. Hold on, my thing is bugging. So, 13. 13 guys I really considered. So
we got 13, 14-ish. You want to just kind of quickly go through the guys that could have gotten a top 10 spot and just ultimately didn't? Who was your... I don't want to get to your first guy off, but like let's go in reverse order kind of. So who was like the easiest cut from your top 10 out of this group?
For me, it was LaMelo Ball. I think, and I said this off air, I think LaMelo Ball has an argument for being the most creative on-ball player in the NBA. Just in terms of the amount of different things he can do with the ball in his hands as a scorer or as a passer. He does have a wide variety of passes and passing angles he can get to, whether it's the skip pass. He's made some of the passes he's made have been legitimately some of the most impressive passes I've ever seen. There's one play from 2 years ago against the Wizards, I think, and he makes this ridiculous like left hand going out of bounds wraparound pass perfectly to the right corner. And I'm like, yeah, there's like 3 players on the planet that can make this pass. And there's probably like 1 or 2 that will even attempt to make this pass. So, but this is kind of just I don't want to turn this into a LaMelo Ball think piece, but like he's kind of just been the same player as he like over the past 3 years. Like he's kind of just the same offensive player, which you mentioned this off air. He's still playing with Taj Gibson in the Big 2-5. Yes. Some of that's also health. Yes. But like, I do think something has to come into the effect of like, you're a guy that's going to be a little bit higher turnover usage. You're not this like quarterback of the offense type of guy in terms of like, I'm just going to make the consistently right read every time. And then when I have to, get creative, I'll do that. LaMelo's great. He's a really good playmaker, but I do have him just outside the top 10.
Yeah, I think LaMelo's development has pretty strictly been as a scorer. Like, I think over these last 2 years, he's gotten a lot better around the rim and painted area at just scoring and creating downhill pressure. But in terms of the playmaking reads and the passing, he kind of stepped into the league as a top 10 passer on the planet, in my opinion. He was immediately just, same with Lonzo. Like, him and Lonzo both came into the league and were just amazing, amazing passers. LaMelo, I think, is the most interesting player we're going to talk about because typically when people think of playmaking, where your mind goes is scoring ability and passing. That balance of I can pressure the defense as a scorer and I'm a really good passer. LaMelo's a weird case study in immensely talented scorer who can give you like 30 points, immensely talented passer who can make most of the passes on a basketball court. But the two don't really blend. Like, the scoring doesn't lead into the playmaking like you want from some of these other guys. Like, for example, he's a pretty isolation, pick and roll heavy player in the half court who's looking for the pull-up 3, but struggles to make basic shovel passes, which is usually the shot or the pass you are looking for out of leveraging the pull-up 3. He really struggles with pace. And like slowing down and really operating in the half court, coming off of screen. Like when he comes off a screen, he has 1 speed. He's just turning the corner and looking to go and make a really quick decision. He doesn't have that, I'm going to turn the corner, pause, put you in jail, leverage this advantage to make it the best possible shot. I think in transition, he's easily one of the top 5, 6, 7 playmakers on the planet. Just insane in transition, and that's where the creativity comes into play. Like I said, if this was a passers list, he'd be in my top 10. But it's just that some of those like lack of basic point guard reads that maybe come with, I don't know if it's the era he grew up in or just the height and lack of physicality.
If it's the era he grew up in.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I do think he lacks. I think everyone above him is better at making basic pick and roll reads and basic point guard reads. So LaMelo actually was my first like easy cut out of my top 10 consideration as well. He was my number 14.
Okay, so I actually did have 16, and for some reason when I was typing on my list like beforehand, I left somebody very important outside of the top 10. So yeah, LaMelo's 14 for me.
Okay, so we both have LaMelo 14. Good. I guess this is just the top 14 at this point. Who was your next guy? Like next quotations easy cut.
For me, I had Darius Garland 13.
Okay.
I had DG 13. I think DG's awesome. I think you talk about pace. I think the way he is legitimately one of the best pick and roll initiators in the league. Can make every pass to the tool belt. Honestly, I just think I value some of what the other guys bring a little bit more. And I do think a drawback on Darius Garland is consistently performing in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So if we are talking about like, the playoffs mattering, I think I would rather have every one of my like top 12 over Darius Garland.
That's fair. I'm not going to knock him too much for these playoffs because of the injury stuff.
Sure.
But I do agree in the previous playoff series we've seen from him, there is a level of like kind of a consistent trend, and we'll probably talk about this with another guy later on the list, where it's like defenses have been able to force him to go into a scorer mode that then limits the playmaking. And what I mean by that is Garland is at his best when he turns the corner out of pick and roll and has an advantage to work with. Like, I'm going to leverage this roll man next to me, whether it's Mobley or Allen. And it's like, I'm an amazing lob passer. I'm amazing at taking the extra Nash dribbles to navigate around the paint. I can spray it to the corners. I can hit the wings. I'm really quick decision maker. Don't really turn the ball over. When I get off the ball, I'm going to relocate and create havoc with my movement. The problem is in the playoffs, we start to see the switching. And that's when it's like, okay, We're going to switch every action. We're not going to let Garland turn the corner and have a 2-on-1. And then it's Garland. In order for you to be a playmaker, now you're going to have to beat your man 1-on-1. And I do think that's where some of his limitations come into play, because it's like, yes, he's agile, but he's not the most explosive athlete on the planet. And he's on the skinnier side, so he's definitely prone to physicality in the playoffs. Doesn't have too much of an in-between scoring game outside of the floater, so he's not going to like really pressure the defense in the mid-range. It's kind of drive or pull up three. And I do think with aggressive switching, his playmaking does lose value more than any of the guys above him. So I do agree with that. I do think the playoffs, I think regular season playmaking, Garland would have to be top 10. Just an absurd creator, and the way he pushes pace, the way he can slow it down and play in the half court, paint touches, threatening the pull-up three and hitting the short roll. He can pretty much do it all, but I do think the switching in the playoffs has consistently shown to be like, you get these games where he gets like 3 assists, 4 assists, despite having the ball for most of the game, and I do think that hurts his value as a playmaker. I don't think you can do that with any of the other guys in the top 12.
Yeah.
Or actually, top 13, because Garland actually was my 12. Garland was my 12.
Okay, who's your 13?
My 13 was Dame.
Okay.
Dame's another guy who's just pressures the defense so much as a scorer with the pull-up three. And we actually talked about this with the scorers list. Like, my drawback with Dame is he doesn't anymore really leverage that threat of the pull-up three into explosive driving. He used to have just a nasty first step and change of direction that was just paint touches at will to go along with the pull-up shooting. And his best reads as a playmaker were the drive and kick out of those drives. Like, he'd draw 2, split the double, get in the paint, I'm going to hit the corner. And that was like his best playmaking read. Now it's kind of exclusive to, I draw an aggressive coverage in the pick and roll, and then I dump it into the short roll. And that obviously has a ton of value, but I do wonder, like, how much differently his playmaking would have looked just specifically this past year if he wasn't so consistently shoveling it to Giannis, who then is just a wrecking ball. Like, I don't really know what to do with that. I do think Dame's regression as a slasher has had also a hit on his playmaking. But in terms of just, like, yeah, the threat of the pull-up three, the ability to make a lot of good passes without turning the ball over, Dame deserves a mention in top 10 consideration.
So I have Dame 11. I had Dame 11. 12 for me, and I honestly still didn't know what to do with him. I have LeBron James at 12. And the reason I have LeBron just outside the top 10 is I think there's 2 big reasons why I think Bron isn't anymore a top 10 playmaker, which God forbid I have you 12. I think the 2 biggest things are, one, over the past couple of years, he's noticeably been a more turnover prone guy. This season and last season, so 24/25, he's now well above 5. I think it's like 5.5 turnovers per 100 possessions. This in the regular season. This year he was at specifically 5.2 turnovers per 100 possessions. And then the playoffs. I mean, the one like sign I guess you want to be positive is that the number dropped by almost half. But hey, you have Luka Doncic on your team now, which is in a way another drawback I think for Bron, because I think his role has significantly decreased the level of playmaker responsibilities he's going to have. Where, to be honest, a lot of Bron's offensive responsibilities are roll man stuff, mid post, that's pinch post isolations, spot up threes, and then when it's okay, your turn and Luka's maybe off the floor, then you'll get 5 or so possessions of you going isolation ball and you creating from that and playmaking. But then even then, it's going to be Austin with the ball in his hands. So there is a slight knock for that, on top of just the regression as a slasher, because he's 42 years old, guys. I'm not knocking the man's passing ability in general, but due to some responsibilities compared to the other guys, due to the regression as a slasher, due to the fact that he had been more of a turnover-prone guy until they got so they brought Luka in, which, again, brought some of that other stuff down. Yeah, that's why I brought outside my top 10.
That's totally fair. I actually think, and I don't know if you agree with this, LeBron to me was the hardest guy to rank out of anyone I considered.
I think Bron in general is one of the hardest players to rank in the entire league. It's so hard to have like an objective conversation about
It is
Bron.
weird. Specifically the playmaking, it's really weird because, yes, you don't get nearly as much spread pick and roll stuff, but part of me kind of like is like, well, they didn't have a center. So you look at the playoff series against Minnesota, and LeBron's best.
I have a drawback to that.
Well, hang on. Let me
Okay,
Let
go
me
ahead.
cook
Go
for a
ahead.
second. Let me cook. LeBron's best playmaking reads are I have a roller going at the basket, and I am going to pick apart whatever rotation you make after that, right? And obviously, he hasn't been this volume spread pick and roll guy for years now, really since like 2020. But even going back to like the Denver series, him and AD in that two-man game was lightning. Like he was consistently just picking apart and Denver's defense was bad against the pick and roll. Don't get me wrong, but in that series specifically, the 2024 playoffs, you get just like
The first round series.
the first round series, yes. The first round
Okay.
series, you just get pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll from LeBron. And he really was picking apart every rotation Denver tried to make. When they sent the low man, it's a skip. When they didn't send the low man, it's a lob. And I do think, like, my question is, has LeBron regressed from the 2024 playoffs? Or is he the exact same player now without AD?
I mean, I think he's slightly to regress. My drawback to that is like, yeah, I still think in a scenario where it's Braun getting spread pick and roll touches, like he can dice up any and will dice up any coverage a defense throws at him. And maybe this is a like coaching like argument here. But when they had AD, they weren't going to it either. Like it was very much. It was still very much Austin AD or D'Lo AD.
That's the question. So I do agree with you over an 82 game season, but I wonder. Like I'm thinking specifically.
Even the Denver series, it was like in moments like game 2 down the stretch, it was Braun and AD pick and roll, for example.
Yeah.
But throughout that series, and maybe I just need to go back and I could be completely wrong. It still felt like, because I remember begging for like, why are we not going more Braun AD pick and roll?
I'm with you, and that's why I had LeBron 10th. I didn't have him like high up on my list. I agree with everything you're saying. It's the load. Like he can't handle the same offensive load that anyone above him can. And maybe isn't as versatile of a playmaker as he used to be. But I do still think he's one of those guys that just has the gift of I can make every pass on the court.
Sure.
And it's like it doesn't matter.
I feel like a Braun hater right now. Oh my god.
It doesn't matter where he like. For example, when he gets a mismatch in the post, you have to send a double, and he's gonna find the open man every single time. I also think as a screener, he has value because not only does he demand attention on the roll, when he gets the ball in the short roll, he's gonna make the right read every single time. I think as an off-ball guy, his like ability to stampede and then always make the right extra pass again just has like this soft, subtle value. Playing off of Luka and just kind of attacking a closeout or whatever. The added volume as a spot-up three-point shooter and efficiency, making like 40% of those, does probably add value as a playmaker because defenses have to respect him more. Creates more space than in years past. And then the main thing though is, and this is kind of always dependent on how he's feeling. LeBron is still a monster in transition when he's making a deliberate effort to push the pace. And I do think that's kind of the selling point. It'd be like, how many guys in the league are better transition playmakers than LeBron? Like, there's got to be like 2.
Yeah.
There's got to be like
fair.
2. And so that would kind of be my selling point. You still got the grab and go stuff when he's locked in, when he's engaged. And maybe if this was an 82 game list, like, give me Garland. But specifically thinking, like, how does your playmaking look in the playoffs? I think LeBron did just enough to get into my top 10. What's funny is before we started recording, like right before we started recording, I had him 11th.
Okay, so who's 11 now?
Ja Morant.
You know what's funny?
Is Ja your 10? You moved him above.
I think Ja's my 10.
Okay, yeah. So Ja is the weird one because I had Ja 9th originally, actually. I had him 9th.
Okay.
And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I think I'm giving Ja Morant too much credit for what he can be versus what he was just in 2025. Like, I think 2022 or 2023 Ja, probably pushing like top 6, top 7. The slashing, the ability to make every pass, the just the handle to get wherever he wanted to go at will, and the way he navigated screens from Steven Adams, just absolutely ridiculous. But this year, Memphis's half-court offense just wasn't very good, and they never did have a go-to. Like, their half-court offense has never been special during the Ja era, but I definitely felt way better about, like, okay, we can go to Ja spread, pick and roll when things get tough years ago than I did this year, and I just don't really think I saw enough from Ja this year specifically, whether it was, like, the lack of spread, pick and roll usage or just like the jump shot, teams adjusting to the fact that he really doesn't have a jump shot and hasn't developed even a reliable mid-range shot at this point. But also the fact that like while he does get to the rim a lot, he's not the same finisher he was a couple of years ago. The above the rim finishing just isn't the same. There was one season where he was like 71% from 0 to 3 feet. I don't think he's anywhere close to that right now. So I do think a little bit less rim pressure. Defense is adjusting to the lack of a jumper. And then the less spread pick and roll usage. Yes, he's still a world-class slasher. Yes, he's maybe the most underrated passer on the planet. But just in 2025, I don't think I saw enough to get him over LeBron.
Fair. So again, I have Ja Morant 10, which I think is starting off our top 10. We both revealed 10 now.
Yep.
Right? I think we're good.
Yep.
So I have Ja 10. I think there are definitely a lot of question marks about Ja as a player entering the 2026 season. Whether it's his health, whether it's the fact that there's still been no clear signs that a jump shot has developed yet from Ja, which I do think has affected his playmaking, has affected just his offensive output as a player, especially when you add in the fact that like the injuries have stacked up for Ja, which has it's hard to like deny that it has affected his rim pressure a little bit. With that being said, Ja Morant, if you look at drives per 75 possessions, I'm going to turn into a complete spreadsheet warrior now.
Do it.
Ja Morant's drives per 75 possessions is still fourth in the entire NBA. The only three players above him is another guy we're going to mention, I'm sure, in SGA, Zion Williamson, and TJ McConnell. Gotta love us some TJ. Like, so Ja, with this being a down year in terms of offensive impact, Ja is still one of the better guys at putting pressure on a defense. Still a good ball screen operator. I would argue that he definitely isn't as elite of a ball screen operator as almost everybody else on our list. Hold on, really quickly, if I were to look at my list, I would say there's maybe one guy I prefer him over, maybe. But overall, I think that still the downhill pressure is valuable. I still think, like you said, he is one of the more underrated passers in the league in terms of things he has, in terms of different passing angles and ways he could get off his passes against a variety of different coverages. And I didn't necessarily get Bron bail for the offensive and like for the coaching stuff that we kind of talked about. I'm going to give Ja just enough bail for some of the lack of offensive cohesion and offensive structure. Because one, I think at the beginning of the year, we were giving Memphis a lot of credit. And I think for kind of how they did, like pun intended, reinvent the wheel, which is what they called it. How they reinvented the wheel or whatever. And they start off the season guns blazing. I think a lot of people were giving them a lot of credit. And then mid-season, it all goes to shit. We're 30 minutes in. YouTube will be fine. It all goes down the drain. And I think we all like course corrected and overreacted a lot to how we feel about some guys on this team.
I agree with this.
Whereas Ja at the end of the year, if anything, like first half of the year, we were saying Jaren's top 20, very clearly at that point, at least the best player on the team. Ja the second half of the year at least did enough to kind of course correct, and the scoring volume came back. Again, I think continue to prove that he is one of the more underrated passers in the league. I think a knock on Ja is something that you similarly said about, I think it was Dame. No, it was DG, where he'll just have these random games. You're like, he has like 2 assists right now. Like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
That is a small gripe, I think, with Ja, but I'm going to have Ja number 10 and hopefully a full offseason. And, like, can they please find some semblance of offensive cohesion? I think Ja could arguably go back up. I agree with your point about, like, 2023, 2022 Ja, though.
I think that's fair. I also, and Sean's lost light, all right? I think one thing about Ja, too, that I didn't mention, actually 2 things. One positive, one negative. One positive that neither of us mentioned is, like, Memphis leaned into this we're going to play in transition all the time type of offense.
Because of Ja.
That starts with Ja. Yeah, Ja's another one of those guys in the short list of just world-class transition playmakers. The speed, the ability to make passes on the fly, just crazy transition playmakers. So that is a point in favor. But I will say, OKC completely took away their transition offense. I don't know how much of that is Ja, but OKC completely took away Memphis' transition offense, and then it became a complete disaster. And then Ja got hurt, and then it was even more of a disaster. But that's story for another day. The negative part of Ja, though, that I think I wanted to mention that I do think is a huge advantage of LeBron's is Ja doesn't really do anything to improve a possession when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. You're not going to get much cutting. You're not going to get much screening. You're not going to get much floor spacing. And I do think that's kind of like you kind of have to just split hairs at this point. We're talking about the best creators in the world. And I do think Ja is one of those guys that needs to have the ball in his hands to have that type of playmaking impact, but then also is somewhat one-dimensional in what he can do with the ball. So it's kind of just like it limits the ceiling of Memphis's half-court offense, in my opinion. But then again, I still had him 11th, right? Like, this is still one of the best. I'm just being nitpicky. You sounded like a LeBron hater. I sounded like a Ja hater just now. You want to go to your number 9? Let's go to your number 9.
Okay, so number 9 for me is Jalen Brunson. Number 9 for me is Jalen Brunson. The easiest pitch. He's probably like the guy with the easiest selling point, honestly, is high volume creator, never turns the ball over. Like, one of the better isolation creators in the entire game, could create his game from every spot on the floor. And he's a guy that has so much scoring gravity because of, like, if you leave Brunson on an island offensively and say, hey, look, we're just going to go one-on-one, he's going to, like, just give you 40 efficiently. And there's nothing you can, very similar to another guy on the list. But the fact that he is such an elite offensive scorer, honestly, kind of sets up his playmaking, which if you want to, like, knock Brunson and be a reason for me why I think he's not higher up on the list, is because I do think he's a guy that so heavily and maybe this is unfair, he so heavily relies on his scoring and kind of sets up his playmaking, which in terms of my fault, that his scoring sets up his passing, better wording, setting up his passing, which again may be hypocritical when we get to some of the guys later up on the list. But I think some of the guys as you get later on the list, I think they aren't as dependent maybe on their scoring gravity, leading into them being able to make reads as a passer. And I'm gonna kind of stop there. I like Brunson as a playmaker. The fact that he doesn't turn the ball over is so valuable. Because, and we've said this a lot about so many other guys throughout the league, that the fact that that if the ball's in Brunson's hands, that you're gonna get a quality shot on almost every single possession, super valuable. Has some off-ball utility as a spot-up catch and shoot guy. Decent at pushing pace. Like I like Brunson a lot. Oh wait, pushing pace to transition. Plays with the best pace in the half court. His deceleration, the different counters he has, awesome. Again, looking more as a scorer and then laying that up to passing. So I do have Brunson at 9. Maybe I'm being a little unfair, but I do have Jalen Brunson at 9.
I'll wait to respond on Brunson because I am a bit higher on him. I'm just going to move on to my number 9. I think everything you said is totally fair, though. Like, the way you framed it, Brunson at 9 makes a lot of sense. My number 9 is maybe the polar opposite of what you just described, and it's like the playmaking is so reliant on the passing being as good as it is. My number 9 is James Harden.
Okay.
And it's basically the inverse of what you talked about. James Harden at this point is very wishy-washy as a scorer. When the three-point shot is falling, he's going to pressure the defense a lot as a scorer. Yep.
Yeah.
Like, ball screen, you can't be in drop because I'm going to get to this pull-up 3. You can't switch because I'm going to get to this step-back 3. And definitely still does generate downhill pressure. Don't get me wrong. Like, when he gets a mismatch, he still can beat slower defenders off the dribble. But it's not like it was where it's just blow by over and over again. And even when it is a blow by, just not nearly the same type of paint score. The floater has come back a little bit from the hamstring stuff, but the rim finishing has never recovered. The foul generation has never recovered. And I think just the lack of consistent inside the arc scoring pressure then allows defenses to kind of just like not have to do too much to limit his scoring, which then takes away the passing reads. Like, what made James Harden such a ridiculous playmaker back in the day, let's use 2021 as the example, I guess, because that was his highest assist season.
Back in the day is 2021. Good God, we're old.
Back in the day, 2021. Back in the day. Harden was obviously, like, he's one of the best passers ever. I think he actually gets underrated historically as a passer. There's not really a pass he can't make. Whether it's a shovel pass, whether it's a lob, a skip pass, he's mastered the art of picking apart defenses out of pick and roll. What made him such like a top tier playmaker then, though, was not only could he make every pass, the defense had to send 2 to him every single time he touched the ball. You would have guys not only trapping him at half court, but if he beat the trap at half court, then it was the entire paint's collapsing, the low man's dropping, the big is stepping up from the dunker. And it's like, whatever the defense missed in their rotations was then going to get taken advantage of. If Harden beat his man in isolation and the big stepped up, it's immediate lob. If he beat his man in isolation, big stepped up, low man drops, spray it to the corner, open 3. And it was just like over and over again. You'd get the same reads. You get the same reads over and over again. And by the end of the game, the Rockets have 120 points and won. And it's like, oh, yeah, what do you do with that? This guy averages 37 points and 8 assists. The problem is, I don't think the playmaking skill has regressed in any capacity. I don't think he's incapable of making any of those passing reads. It's just simply the way the defense reacts to his scoring is so different now. You don't get the same type of paint collapses. You don't get the same type of aggressive help at the rim. You don't get any traps or doubles, really. And I do think in that playoff series against Denver, there were a lot of moments where Harden just kind of felt like a nothing on offense. Especially like the last 2 games. It just kind of felt like he was out there doing cardio and not really creating offense on a possession-by-possession basis like he was throughout the regular season. So similar to Garland, actually, that I talked about, I think in the regular season, Harden would be probably top 5 or 6, but specifically this version of Harden in the playoffs, when you get to those switch-heavy defenses and he isn't the same type of explosive first step, I'm going to collapse the paint, there are ways to limit his playmaking and make him kind of shoot himself out of games.
Yeah, I'm going to wait on Harden for just a little bit. Who is your number 8?
My number 8 was Cade Cunningham. And this was another interesting one because I think in terms of the ability to make all of the reads, like we talked about, I'll go back to LaMelo for example. I talked about like kind of the lack of pace off of screens and maybe lacking some of the basic point guard reads. I think Cade is like what 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". I don't actually know his exact height. I think it's 6'6" officially listed, but I'll say 6'7".
Wait, 6'6" or what?
Nope.
Or
block the camera. We're not doing this.
Camera?
We're not doing, dude. It is August. We are not doing this.
Give it up.
Give it up, Unc. Jeez.
All right.
Back in the day. That was back in July. That was back in the day. No,
no, back in the day. All right.
Back in the day. Cade has that big size of LaMelo in a much larger frame, so he's better with physicality, but then he also can make all of the point guard reads. So you get the skip passing, you get the patience off of screens, you get the lob passing. Cade can pretty much make every read, and he can pressure the defense at multiple levels. Really, there's not too much reason to be lower on Cade. I guess I'll give you 3 reasons. Maybe I'm actually underrating him now that I think about it. Like, Cade seems like a decently flawless playmaker. I guess the 7 guys I have ahead of him are either, like, just... Actually, I'll wait to get to that point. But the Cade stuff, I think the first issue is the turnovers, obviously. He's like a walking 4 or 5 turnovers a game in the regular season and playoffs. The question is... And we talked about this a little bit off camera, how much of those are scoring turnovers and how much of those are playmaking turnovers? It's really tough to draw the line because most of Cade's turnovers are an inability to take an extra dribble through a tight gap. Like guys getting up under him or help reaching at the nail and just stripping his handle, and maybe that's because he is so tall. But he doesn't have the ball on a string like some of these other smaller guards that can navigate those tighter spaces. And I do think a lot of those are when he's looking to score. So in some capacity, it's a scoring turnover. But I also think the inability to comfortably take that extra dribble limits him from truly getting all the way to the rim as consistently as some of these other guys. So maybe that then hurts his playmaking because he isn't causing the same type of collapse. It's maybe just like a stunt at the nail or a dig that kind of like makes him uncomfortable, makes him pick up his dribble early and force a tough shot or a tougher pass. But yeah, besides that, like Cade leaned into the pace of Detroit's offense this year, turned into a really good open floor playmaker. Yeah, man, Cade, I think if we talk about ranges, like I could see Cade as high as 5. I think 5 is where I'd stop with Cade. And I don't think I could really get him lower than 8. So maybe I'm lower on the lower side of him, but like 5 through 8-ish for Cade seems like a decent range to me.
All right, so you said something that made me briefly bump up one of my players, which did cause a bit of a chain reaction. So number 8 for me is actually James Harden. And I am going to kind of talk about some of the other stuff that you already mentioned. What I want to give Harden a lot of credit because the Clippers are such a tough team to kind of talk about entering last season. And now it's kind of the opposite where I think there's all this optimism in Clipper Nation. Is that what they call them? I don't know. I think that's the thing. Okay. So, but there's all this optimism amongst Clipper fans right now, and rightfully so, based off how last season ended, based off the moves around the margins they made this summer, getting a fully healthy offseason with Kawhi. There's a lot of optimism to be had for Clipper fans right now. Whereas last season, there was so much, I'm not even going to say like negativity, but like skepticism about the Clippers entering last season for a lot of different reasons. You lose Paul George, you let him walk for nothing. You don't know what the status of Kawhi is. Harden very clearly looked like he was on the edge of the cliff. Shout out Max Kellerman, by the way. I haven't heard that name in a while. Very much on the edge of the cliff, it looked like. And Harden, at the very least, for the beginning of last season, until Kawhi eventually did come back, and obviously you have to credit, T. Lue and Jeff Van Gundy defensively. You have to credit Zubac making a fairly predictable leap as a player, in my opinion. Have to credit Norman Powell for another fairly predictable leap, which is really just due to volume. But Harden kind of had to stabilize everything and be the guy that was operating the offense. And then to your point, when the 3-point ball was falling and you have that added scoring attention and scoring gravity, then that's just the cherry on top. But what Harden was able to do simply from a quarterbacking the offense and getting Norman Powell his touches, getting Zoo his touches out of the post or on post entry passes, or being an elite lob passer that he is for Zoo, can make every pass in the tool belt, like you mentioned. Harden deserves a lot of credit for that, and I'm glad you mentioned that Harden is a underrated passer in terms of all-time categories. I would even go further and say Harden in general, when he's done playing, we're going to be like, damn, did we give him enough credit for how truly dominant 2017 to 2021 James Harden was? You've obviously seen a lot of the ring culture discourse over the past few weeks from what Bron said, what KD, and what some of these other guys have said about it. I think Harden is arguably one of the biggest players from this generation that gets docked the most in all-time conversations because of him not winning a ring in 2018 or 2021, which were probably his two best shots at it in Brooklyn and in Houston. Chris Paul gets hurt. Kevin Durant's toe is on the line, and Harden also is playing through a hamstring injury. That's the other unfortunate part too about Harden. It's the back half of his prime is he so clearly was affected by the hamstring injury, post injury, so 21. But this year, man, deserves all the credit in the world for stabilizing the offense. Like I said, being the quarterback of their team until Kawhi got back, and even then, still kind of being the quarterback. And I think all the negatives are pretty cut and dry, like you mentioned. One of the things we talked about Harden in the negative light entering the season, that is kind of the case, is because his offensive bag is so dependent on the pull-up 3-point shot falling, you're just able to switch. And we kind of talked about that at the beginning of the year. Just switching just nullifies the fact that, okay, cool, you play drop and this is a pull-up 3. Well, now you just switch, which, again, back in the day was practically a death sentence switching a James Harden pick and roll. Now you just switch it, and it just nullifies so much of his scoring gravity, which ultimately is going to be the biggest reason why he, for me, is, where are we at, number 8. But pure passer, again, Harden is one of the best of all time, and for sure top 5. Top 4 for me are all in one way or another, arguably one of the best, some of the best ever. But Harden's definitely in that tier purely as a passer.
Yeah, it's interesting. While you were talking about the no ring culture thing, it kind of made me think about how a lot of all-time great playmakers have suffered from that. I think the original example would be John Stockton, one of the greatest playmakers ever, but never won the championship, and then his career is viewed in a very negative light. But then you get to Steve Nash. Steve Nash, damn near in my opinion, the second best playmaker in NBA history behind Magic Johnson. And one of the 5, 6, 7 best offensive players ever, will never get that credit solely because Phoenix never got it done. But then you just this generation, Chris Paul, and I was going to bring that up, the recent discussions on Twitter around Chris Paul, that guy is criminally underrated. Same thing's happening with Harden.
Kyrie, also, but CP in his prime, come on, guys.
Yeah. But you said, we're gonna forget about we're gonna forget to appreciate James Harden's prime. That's what it's already happening with Chris Paul, and it's already happening with Russell Westbrook, because at his peak, there aren't many playmakers better than that either. 2016, 2017 Westbrook, just a ridiculous playmaker. So it is interesting how a lot of those playmakers were one ring away from being unanimously
a different
loved.
echelon
right.
of
right.
Yeah.
It is interesting. But yeah, just to quickly recap where we're at so far. We did like our top 14, but I'm only gonna really show the top 10. This is where we're at in the list right now. Your top 10 started with Ja Morant, Jalen Brunson, and James Harden. My top 10 started with LeBron James, James Harden, and Cade Cunningham. I really like the differences because I feel like on the scorers, we kind of had every player in the same tier and every player in the same, so there wasn't much back and forth. Right now, our lists are shaping up to be pretty different, which I think is more interesting. I'm excited to see where you go with this, the rest of this list. Who's your 7?
So my 7 is SGA, the league MVP. I think with Shea, I think he does what Brunson does, just better. I think he's much better at pushing pace of transition. I'm not knocking Brunson's ability, but I think Shea is one of the best transition players, period, in the league right now. I think Shea. It was something we were talking about in a negative light about Cade, but it's such an elite positive for Shea. His tight space like navigation is freaking ridiculous. Where he's facing so many like just ridiculous coverages on a per night basis, especially in the playoffs, and then it's gonna change. Like you go from what he saw in the Denver series to then what he kind of sees going after that. Like his ability to navigate tight spaces and still, for the most part, be a relatively low turnover guy is it's awesome to watch from Shea. I think another guy that kind of depends on this, letting his scoring set up his passing. He's not a proactive passer, which I think is something you can knock on Shea as a playmaker. Whereas I think everybody in my top 6, I think are very much like, and maybe to a downfall, even to their own downfall. Yeah, I think can be overly aggressive passers in some instances. Where Shea, for the most part, is a very reactive passer, and even then, like he's driving, looking to score. One of the 3 best drivers in the entire league, 3rd in drive per 75 possessions. If we're being spreadsheet warrior here, if you look at B-Ball Index's playmaking talent grade, he actually grades out the lowest out of every guy that I'm assuming we have in our top 7. He grades out last out of all those guys. But I think it is honestly because of how much he is leveraging his all-time elite level scoring to set up that passing. So for me, I do think he is a slightly better playmaker than Jalen Brunson. I think the argument on Brunson over Shea, I would actually say, is maybe more consistent off-ball shooting for Brunson. And then if we're going kind of tiers, I can see Shea. I can see Shea, honestly, Harden, and Brunson probably as high as 5. I think you could talk me into it. And I can see Shea as low as probably like 8 or 9. I do think Shea is firmly in the top 10. It's just more so, what you prefer.
So I like that you made the Shea and Brunson comparison because those were the 2 I was flip-flopping back and forth on my list earlier. So I actually ended, and we're getting deep into the list now. I had Brunson 5 and Shea 6.
Okay.
And this kind of back and forth I was doing was dependent on a few different variables because I do think they are really similar in that it's okay. I'm a world-class inside the arc scorer. I can score in isolation against every defender you've ever seen. I can score against every pick and roll coverage in a bunch of different ways. I'm going to get to my spots at will. There's no way for you to make me pick up my dribble. I can turn my back to the basket and play from the post. I am just going to if you do not send extra help, I'm going to give you 35 or 40 in the playoffs every game.
Efficiently.
That's the selling point. But there are just a few differences between each player that are like, you have to get really nitpicky. So I think Brunson really pressures defenses with the pull-up 3. I don't think Shea does. So I think that makes Brunson a little bit more dynamic of a pick and roll threat in the playoffs where it's like you have to get out or he's going to step into the pull-up 3 at like a 40% clip at times. I do think that matters. I think Shea will see softer coverages against pick and roll for that reason, which then takes away some of those short roll passing reads. I also think Shea's size makes him more dangerous when he's closer to the basket. He's a much better finisher at the rim, and he's much better at getting all the way to the rim, which the downhill pressure will, again, favor Shea. I also think, like you said, Shea's better at pushing pace. That matters. He gets guys running. Ultimately, though, the reason, and I had to split hairs, the reason I ended up with Brunson at 5 and Shea at 6 is I do flat out just think Brunson's a much better passer. I think the point
Fair.
that you really hit on was Shea's lack of proactivity. I think Brunson has some of the same issues, but I do think Brunson's a much more proactive passer than even Shea. Like we
That's
talked
fair.
about some of these guys like Cade and Harden, way more proactive passers. But then there's like a tier jump to Brunson and then another tier jump to Shea, in my opinion, in terms of like the proactivity of your passing. And I think, yeah, both of these guys never turn the ball over. They're both just heavy volume scorers. They both leverage that scoring into passing opportunities. I do think Brunson's capable of making more difficult passes more consistently. And I do think that allows the Knicks to run an even heavier chunk of their offense through him. Like in the playoffs, Shea had the ball in his hands for 41% of the Thunder possessions. 41% of the time the ball was in Shea's hands. The Knicks had the ball in Brunson's hands for 49% of the time. So we're talking about a team that made the conference finals, and half of the time they were on offense, the ball was in Jalen Brunson's hands. And that's in addition to, like you said, also probably having a little bit more off-ball utility. So I do think Brunson just.
I think I just countered-argued myself.
It's just a tiny bit like if you flipped Shane Brunson, I would not change my opinion at all. But for me, like those are my 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, now you've got to get to your 5 and 6. I can imagine who they are, but who'd you get? Who'd you get at 6?
Who's your 7?
My 7 is Steph Curry.
Oh, okay. So my 6 is Steph Curry.
Okay, so let's have the Steph combo. What's talk to me about Steph?
Gravity Warrior.
It is that simple. It really is that
really
simple.
is that simple. Gravity Warrior, obviously, can create out of ball screens. I think Steph is. You made the argument, I think, at the beginning. This was either at the beginning of the show or off camera, where Steph's pick and roll passing is very much so like connective playmaking and like him hitting short rolls and hitting Draymond or Looney or whoever the case may be, which I think is a fair argument. I think Steph's argument is just purely just gravity. Like, what he does on and off the ball purely from the fact that you have to pick him up from half court because he is already, the moment he steps across half court is a threat to shoot the ball. Like, that's just gravity that nobody else in the league like has. And then the fact that he is a good passer, the fact that you have the off ball stuff that you have to worry about as well, which you explained earlier, like does, you have to give some brownie points to the 18 illegal screens per game that Draymond's going to set and the passing that Jimmy Butler has to make as well away from the ball. But all seriousness, like gravity king and good enough pick and roll playmaker, honestly.
What's funny is I think the Steph discussion was very brief on scoring, too. It was just like, this guy doesn't stop moving. He's got an all-time handle, and he's the best shooter ever. It's that simple.
Next person.
The conversation about Steph is very simple because everyone knows what it is. The Steph thing to me is super fun because, like, I was thinking about, while I was making my list, where would peak Steph be? Like, would he be pushing number 1 territory?
So 16 through, 21?
Yeah, just take like 16 Steph and drop him in today. Like, would he be the number 1 playmaker? He'd be like top 2 for sure, right?
He'd be 1.
Like, he'd probably be 1. The gravity.
The gravity is just stupid.
It was defenses not knowing what to do. They were just like, it was like a mystery box of an offensive player. Defenses were clueless. They'd be playing 2 bigs on the court and then not stepping out. And then if they did step out, it was like, oh, now our offense is going to play 4-on-3 for 90% of this game.
Even like 21 or 22 Steph is top 2.
Yeah, Steph's a crazy
2021
playmaker.
Steph, the year that they lost to Memphis in the play-in.
Yeah. That version of Steph. But I do think,
Sheesh.
here's my like, I'll be the negative one on Steph because I do think like I just want to highlight the difference between why he was number 1 then and why he's like 6'7". Oh. That was not intentional. I realized it right when I said it. That was not intentional.
Yes, it was.
That was not intentional. I promise you that was not intentional. You had him 6th and I had him 7th. That's why I said 6'7", not because of the meme. This is terrible. I'm going to delete this episode. This is ridiculous. No. The reason Steph's not in that top tier is because I think clear decline in burst and agility. So kind of talked about it with Dame. It used to be I'm such a threat to hit the pull-up 3 that I can also slash and then make all these crazy layups. Steph doesn't have that same type of interior scoring pressure, just the ability to get to the paint. make floaters, make layups, all that good stuff. Another point with Steph that I think is important is kind of what I talked about with like the teams not knowing how to guard him when they had slow-footed bigs and didn't know what coverages to run. I do think to some extent what I talked about with Garland and some of these other guys, there is a level of we're going to switch all of Steph's actions and make him beat us as a scorer, and he can do that. But it's not the same type of like, you don't see as consistently those two guys running with Steph, we get a wide open layup. It definitely still happens more than any other player in the league, but not to the extent it used to happen where teams were just confused, running around like chickens with their head cut off trying to guard Steph. There's just more of an attention to detail. We've seen it we've seen it so many times that defenses kind of know what they're dealing with at this point. So I do think there's some of that. So kind of like the lesser like paint pressure, less drive and kick stuff, the lesser like off ball breakdowns from the gravity. But then yeah, it's still like I can make all of these pick and roll reads. Oh yeah, and also the reliance on a connector, like you said. Like I do think of the top 6 or top 5, all of these guys can make every pass. Whereas, or top 4 really, because the top 4 I think is kind of where things start to separate. They can all make every pass in the book, and Steph just is more so reliant on the gravity, and then other guys making those extra reads for him, those connective reads. But yeah, everything else you still have. You still have the shooting pressure. You still have the movement. You still have the screening. He's maybe the best, most effective screener in the league. Just does so much on every single possession to improve the quality of the team. Even like, I was looking at the numbers actually for a Warriors video coming up soon. Did you know that last season, so 2025, the Warriors with Steph on the court and Jimmy off the court over the entire season still had a 120 offensive rating? Look at that Warriors roster and tell me they should have a 120 offensive rating, dude. It was like Steph
with
Buddy
no Jimmy
Hield,
on the floor.
With no Jimmy. It was
Pods,
like Steph,
like
Pods,
Draymond.
Buddy Hield, Draymond, and Post. Like, dude. 120 is Steph is such an absurdly valuable offensive player. It's hard to wrap our heads around. But yeah, I had him at 7. I had Brunson and Shea over him just for the sheer fact that when you put the ball in their hands, there's less ways to take away their creation. Is kind of what I came down to. Like Steph, I think there are ways to limit his playmaking, and he'll give you 30. Whereas Brunson and Shea are going to give you 30, but then there's also no way to take away their playmaking because they're still generating so much pressure with the ball, possession after possession after possession.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So
but I do like this range of like 5 to 7 that I had, where it's like Brunson, Shea, Steph, and it's just all of these score first guys who demand so much defensive game planning that everyone else gets open shots. That's kind of like what I was going for with this tier.
Yeah.
But now I've got 4 left. You've got your number 5. So talk to me about number 5. Who'd you have?
Number 5, and for me, this is a range of 5 to 8. Really, like, I think you can make an argument for any of those guys. Oh, wait, I forgot Brunson, so I guess 5 to 9. Where I can honestly see them as high as 5, or I can see them potentially as low as 9. For me, number 5 is Cade Cunningham. And I just think I'm just higher on Cade as an overall playmaker, honestly. There's not a single pick and roll read that he can't make. One of the 4 or 5 just best players in the half court at maneuvering with pace and playing with the deceleration or playing off of bumps, and while also facing these aggressive ass coverages because the lack of shooting in some of the lineups these teams that he would have. And while I think there is more than enough reasons to be a little bit concerned about Cade as a scorer long term, maybe not even long term, but like currently being a little bit lower on Cade as a scorer right now based off the playoffs, I think he still is very clearly one of the best playmakers on the planet. Yep. Plays as this jumbo creator that can put elite pressure on the rim whenever he wants. Ranked 7th in the entire league in terms of drive per 75 possessions, averaging over 17.5 drives per 100 possessions. Only guys on either one of our lists that ranks slightly higher than him is going to be Shea, Ja, and Brunson, and maybe somewhat of a trend, not on purpose, but all 3 of those guys in my top 10. While also, if you're looking at pick and roll creation ability, I think there's only a couple of guys, and I think it's maybe Luka, Trey, that operate out of the pick and roll better than Cade. So you add in the pace, you add in just the pure playmaking ability and the ability to make different passes. Is he a guy that's going to be a high turnover guy? Yes, he is. He is a walking, like you said, he is a walking 4 turnovers. However, to like give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt, if you look at like just stable, just bad pass turnovers per 75 possessions, and we're going to compare him to every other guy that is kind of around our range of the top 10. Trey has more bad pass turnovers per 75 than Cade. Luka's right in the same ranges as Cade. You have the absurd guy in Tyrese Haliburton who like doesn't even sniff the range of Cade. Steph actually isn't too far off of Cade. Cade's at 1.9. Steph's at about 1.62 bad passes per 75. Harden clears Cade. Bron's
Not to cut you
there.
off. I want to, like, the turnovers was another thing I thought of with Steph that I wanted to mention. Pretty high turnover for the types of passes he's making. But yeah, continue, please.
No, and then Ja Morant also is up there. So Cade does get a lot of crap, and he does need to clear up the turnovers. Some of it's handle, some of it can be reads based or whatever. But if we're simply just talking about bad passes, he's basically in this same little like tier as all these other guys, except Trey, who actually clears him. But Trey's also a little bit different in his
Trey's
own.
Like the ultimate, I'm gonna try this pass, and no one else in NBA history would try it.
So I do think that is a ever so slight like bump for Cade, is that he's at the very least, like, it's not like we're getting 3 bad pass turnovers per 75 possessions. The fact that I think there is still some room for growth for Cade as well, it makes me a little bit higher on the turnovers, if that makes sense, while also looking at all the other great playmaking aspects that Cade has as a part of his game.
These are some great points. I totally agree. I just think we, like you said, it's a range thing. Like, I had him 5 through 8, you had him 5 through 9. We just landed on different sides of the spectrum there. I think you hit the nail on the head. My only thing with Cade that maybe is a little bit of a hang up, and it's kind of like one of those we'll have to wait and see, because we didn't really see it in the Knicks series. I do wonder if Cade's another one of those guys who can be forced to go into a score mode against switching just because he doesn't have elite burst. And I will say, like, between him, Brunson, and Shea, like, Cade is just tiers below them strictly as a standstill isolation scorer, to the point where when you have Cade on an island, I feel like you don't really have to collapse the paint, or you don't really have to like send an immediate double unless like a clear mismatch.
That's fair.
And I do think, like, just in terms of playmaking talent, like the things you're capable of doing as a playmaker, Cade would probably be my number 5 as well. But I do think against different types of playoff defenses, there probably are more ways to take some of his shot creation out of the game. And maybe I'm reading too far into it. Maybe he's such a big physical jumbo creator and such a versatile passer that it doesn't matter. That could also be the case. So I'm kind of wait and see with Cade. But yeah, Cade's on a fast track to getting into this like top 4, because I'm sure we agree the top 4 is pretty clear, like just a tier, in my opinion. And I do think Cade is like starting to really approach that soon.
So explain to us why you have Russell Westbrook number 4.
4, got him in top 2. No. In all seriousness, I do think the top 4. I think you could sell me on an argument for each of these guys being number 1. I feel good about my 1 and 2, and then I feel good about my 3 and 4 separately. But I do think, like, if you told me my number 4 guy was your number 1, I would hear you out, because I do think all of these guys are so different, but all create so much offense for their team.
Yeah.
This top 4. So I'll let you kick it off, though. Actually, before we kick it off, I want to quickly recap, because we're about to go into the heavy hitters. I do want to quickly recap where we're at on the list, just to make sure we're on the same page here. So let's go ahead and throw this up once I get my technological skills up. There we go. All right, you can go ahead and read your 10 through 5 for me.
10 through 5, I have Ja Morant, Jalen Brunson at 9, 8 James Harden, 7 SGA, 6 Steph Curry, and number 5 Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of want to like emphasize the tiers here. I do think LeBron and Harden are in a separate tier from the rest of the list, and I do think they are in the tier with the guys that are just off, which was for both of us really. Well, I had Ja, you had LeBron, but then also like Darius Garland, Dame, LaMelo, like those are the types of guys in that like 9 through 14. Then to me, 5 through 8 is a pretty clear like interchangeable. I got Cade, Steph, Shea, and Brunson. Let's get into this top 4, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to see where some of these guys end up. I feel like we might end up having the exact same list, but we'll see. We'll see. So who's your number 4?
My number 4 is Trey Young.
Same.
Okay, I have Trey 4. I think there is an argument to be had that Trey, and what I'm going to try to do for these guys is make an argument for them being number 1 on each one.
I like that.
I think the argument for Trey is the fact that, well, if we're going metrically here really quickly, B-ball index, number 1 in their playmaking talent grade. Which, if you want that, you want to take that with and run home, Hawks fans. There you go.
It's by a landslide too.
It's by a landslide.
He leads by a.
It's him, and then it's actually like the other 3 guys that we have in our top 4. So he's number 1 in that. I think he has a very intriguing argument to be flat out the best pick and roll creator in the league. Just in terms of how much he leverages from his scoring and his playmaking out of pick and roll. I think he has an argument to be the best pick and roll operator in the entire NBA. In terms of how he sets up his teammates, the insane lob passes he can make to Okongwu or to Clint Capella. He got Clint Capella paid Clint Capella is just a lob pass like merchant. He's played with Harden and Trey Young, 2 of the 3 or 4 best lob passers of all time, and he's gotten hundreds of millions of dollars because of those 2 guys. I think with Trey, if we're going negative, I think with Trey, the 2 biggest drawbacks of Trey are going to be, 1, the turnovers, although there's a very, very easy flip on that you can make, in my opinion at least, and then 2, which is at least a decently similar argument to like a Luka, is like compared to some of the other guys, like they're not as effective like as a driver, like specifically as they score. Trey's finishing. And Trey is very dependent now on just the pull-up 3 at this point. Which could be negatives if you want to view it as that on Trey. But ultra elite passer, the versatility or like the different passes, he's just going to try like insane things like you mentioned. And if it works, it works. I think if you want to go that route, I think Luka does that better. But I am going to have Trey Young at 4.
Yeah, so I also kind of want to do that where you make the argument and then make the counter argument. Trey is interesting because I do think like very limited driver, like you said, also just limited athlete in general, not a ton of burst, very little strength, not a great finisher around the rim, but does have a tight enough handle to get wherever he needs to go with purpose and force reactions from the defense. Probably, in my opinion, the best lob passer ever. I think he's the best lob passer we've ever seen. Just in terms of like the different angles he can get the lob off, the timing, the placement, dude, you'll see him come off a screen running sideways towards the wing 30 feet out and like float up a lob from the hip and it'll land like an inch away from the rim. And you're like, dude, Capella didn't even have to jump to get this lob. Like, dude, it's insane. Dude, Trey's, I think the selling point with Trey for number 1 would be the most valuable shot on a basketball court is a dunk. And there is no player in the league better at creating dunks than Trey Young. Whether it's for Jalen Johnson as a cutter, whether it's for Capella on the lob, whether it's for someone in the slot. Trey is the best in the league at creating dunks. And I do think that is the big selling point with Trey. But then the drawback that comes with I'm looking to create so many dunks is I'm attempting every tight window pass, which is where the bad pass turnovers come in. And that is somewhat of a drawback. Like, that's one thing I always loved about Steve Nash is he was the same way in terms of I'm going to hunt for every single tight window pass. But even he was like a turnover and a half below where Trey Young's at right now. So it just wasn't the same type of like errors. It's a high risk, high reward, but there is more error in Trey Young's game than in any of these other playmakers. The other thing for me that like the big thing for me with Trey is, and I'll just say it, my number 3 is Luka. And kind of, they're very similar in that it's a lot of spread pick and roll. It's a lot of if you switch, I'm going to try to attack the mismatch in isolation. And I do think Luka's ability to finish at the rim and just like create more downhill pressure is more of an advantage. Although like Trey's another guy who probably struggles with switching and the physicality of the playoffs. Like if you get into a series against OKC, and obviously that's kind of an extreme. It's not fair. OKC is not fair. But like if you get into a series against OKC, how valuable is Trey's playmaking going to be when they're just switching every single pick and roll? and he has to create from a standstill. Like, I don't know how much juice you get there. But the main thing with Trey for me, or actually another, I'm kind of just all over the place. I'm just yapping. I really think Trey Young's an interesting player. Hawks made a clear point of emphasis to play with pace this year, and Trey bought in and was like legitimately running the break, which I think just a huge boost, and that's something we saw from Luka in 2024. But to me, the ultimate separator between Luka and Trey, and why I had Luka 3, Trey 4, was simply they look to make the same types of reads, they operate in the same way with the ball, spread, pick, and roll, and Luka is just simply 7 inches taller, a lot stronger, and can just simply make way more passing reads over the top of the defense. And that's literally all it is. Like, Trey could not make the same types of skip passes or just simply any type of pass over the defense. Trey has to get to spots in the court to create that pressure, whereas Luka has that pressure by just simply being 6'7".
Yeah, so no, and I promise you we did not share lists. I have Luka 3. And for a lot of the same reasons, actually. I think the biggest argument for Luka, again, 6'7", jumbo creator, that I think outside of Jokic probably has the best combination of playmaking and scoring in the entire league. I think the drawback of Luka is, I think from a pick and roll standpoint, I think it sucks because I think this is arguably one of Luka's, like, what makes him a all-time level playmaker, but in certain situations it can also be a negative as it goes with his playmaking, is I think Luka's decently dependent from a pick and roll creation standpoint on having a lob threat. I think he's decently dependent on that because I think one of the arguments I was going to make on the switching was I think you can switch against Luka and still be fine because Luka, in theory, you can honestly just switch and let him play from like the elbow, for example, and the level of attention that's going to create off rip because he is 6'7", because he can make, because he is can make those passes over the middle of the floor, make those skip passes, for example. Like, in theory, I do think that, you know, that is something that the defense is going to have to react to. But I also think it's important to understand that there is a reason the past 2 playoff series, we've had this conversation about Luka in the past, why he's had 2 awful playmaking series in terms of output and numbers or whatever, is because Boston just took away the lob threat in Lively or Gafford, and the Lakers didn't have an effective lob threat in Jackson Hayes against Rudy Gobert. So you're just switching, and that nullifies Luka's playmaking because Luka, from a pick and roll creation standpoint, is so dependent on that lob pass, on that lob threat. Because what makes him this all-time elite level passer is the fact that he is arguably the best ever at manipulating the low man. Which again, skip pass and be able to, okay, my eyes are on you on this corner guy the whole time. Last second, I'm just snapping it over to Gafford, and Gafford gets an easy dunk, and vice versa. So, different versatility of passes that can be made. Like I said, arguably the best guy at manipulating that low man of all time. He's 6'7", could just do different things than Trey. And also, while Luka has his fair share of turnovers as well, it's not at the same level as Trey. It's not as bad, if that makes sense. So I'm going to have Luka 3.
The Luka thing is, it's really interesting because I agree with you, but I also think like 2023 Luka could be number 1. And I think the big difference is what we've talked about, the blow-bys, the ability to get all the way around a defender consistently. Like 2021 through actually even going back to like 2020, through 2023 Luka. Go ahead.
Which not to cut you off, I think what you're saying is one of the biggest reasons why he is so lob threat dependent now. Yeah. Because 24-25, without the burst, without the ability to just get around a defender in isolation, which is, I guess, why I'm kind of saying in theory it makes sense. That is why, like, which I'm sure you're about to get to, why he is so lob threat dependent right now as far as it goes with his playmaking.
Yeah, 100%, because he used to be able to get any defender on the planet on an island. Like, it could be the best defender in the league, and it was just a blow-by. Kind of like what we talked about with Harden. The change of pace, and then the deceleration, and then he's shooting like 78% at the rim. Like, that guy was just a lethal paint scorer from the perimeter, just walking paint touch. And we haven't seen that in a couple of years now. Really since like the start of the 2024 playoffs when he had the knee injury, he really just has not been the same type of driver. But yeah, like going back to the 2025 Wolves series, like there were times where the Wolves could switch Julius Randle onto Luka, not bring help, and Luka couldn't get around Julius Randle, and it was like, now we're going to make you a scorer. And because Luka's such a ridiculous shot maker and scorer, he still ends up averaging 30-something efficiently in the series. But then you get these games where it's like, again, like 3 assists, 5 turnovers. Yeah, 1 assist, 5 turnovers. And it's the same as the finals. The finals only averaged 5 assists a game, and it was because Boston switched everything, took away the lob, and were like, Luka, you're going to have to get all the way around us. And they just made him a jump shooter. So I do think that's the only reason Luka isn't like number 1 or 2. But yeah, he's still just this crazy isolation creator, crazy pick and roll scorer who can make every pass, literally every pass, like one of the best passers ever. Just flat out, I think among the guys we've talked about, easily the best passer on this list so far.
Yeah.
Luka's just, he's a ridiculous passer, ridiculous scorer. I just need to see the blow-bys get back. If he gets back to like, and I don't know, this new health regimen that we're seeing could just be a little bit scary. If he's back to normal bursty Luka, and Ayton is like this big rim running lob threat, Luka could be back to number 1 or number 2.
Yeah. Number 2 for me is Tyrese Haliburton. And really what it comes down to is best at pushing pace in the league.
Since Steve Nash.
Yeah. Best at pushing pace since Steve Nash. Does not turn the ball over at all. I want to go back to that bad pass turnovers per 75. So just for example, right? Trey Young's at 2.56. Luka Doncic is at 1.83. Jokic is at 1.31. Steph's at 1.62. Brunson, who's on the low end, 1.16. Shea's actually second lowest out of any guy we mentioned at 0.91. Tyrese Haliburton's at 0.77 bad pass turnovers, per 75 possessions. This dude does not turn the ball over.
That's
point blank.
Can I like build off of that by also mentioning, like, we're talking about bad pass 0.77 bad pass turnovers per 75. This is a guy who averages 75 passes per game, which means for every 75 passes, less than one of them is going to be a turnover.
Less of one of them is going to be a turnover or because of a bad pass. That's stupid.
So that's so crazy.
That's insane. I think, and the fact that he's the best at pushing pace literally since Steve Nash, and I'm not going to disagree with that. Like, they get at any level of basketball, Little League, AAU, travel ball, whatever, high school, college, G League, NBA, Euro League. I'm sure I'm kind of guessing, I guess, on that one, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. NBA, on any level, the most efficient shot in terms of like when you're where you're getting it at, not necessarily like location, but like what kind of play type is in transition. Every league, every level of basketball, the quality of shot you're going to get just incredibly gets better in transition. Like, I actually need to pull up the numbers.
I've got you with the numbers. So just in this last season, the average half court possession generated 0.98 points per possession. 0.98. The average transition possession was 1.25. So that 27 points more efficient. The worst transition offense in the NBA was Charlotte in terms of efficiency, and they were 1.1 points per possession.
Look
in
at the
transition.
Pacers. Regular season and playoffs. Look at the Pacers.
It's I don't need you got it. Talk to me.
1.179.
Yeah.
So basically 1.2 points per possession.
Yeah. It's absolutely the best half court offense in the NBA was Cleveland, and they were 1.06 points per possession. So just to like really hammer that home, Charlotte's transition offense was more efficient than Cleveland's half court offense by 4 points. That's how efficient transition offense is.
Yeah. So the fact that Hallie is the best at doing that out of anybody, the fact that he's not going to turn the ball over in the half court, the fact that he does get off the ball so quickly, and part of this you can give some credit to Carlisle and how they've kind of gotten everybody to buy into their random offense. But the fact that he can get off the ball so quickly, partially in early offense, but also in the half court, allows for the Pacers offense to constantly stay moving. And Haliburton gives up the ball at 20 seconds once he crosses half court. The Pacers have ran 2 actions. Ball gets back to Haliburton with 14 seconds. The defense is now moved and rotated twice by now. Okay, now it's 8 seconds left. Hallie gets the ball back a third time for a random step-up screen for Miles Turner out of the slot. And now it's Haliburton walking into a pull-up 3. Like, the fact they can get off the ball so quickly and so efficiently is another point that I think you can give in favor of Haliburton. I think the biggest knock on Haliburton, the biggest knock on Haliburton is he's not this guy that plays with like insane burst. So at times it can just be we're just gonna switch and kind of see what we can do with you. Although Haliburton also, it's not even really because he can't get around them. I'm gonna kind of retract. I think it's because switching nullifies his aggressiveness a little bit. Where I think Haliburton, if you are playing drop or you're putting 2 on the ball with the Haliburton pick and roll, he is inherently more aggressive, I think, at making that aggressive skip pass, which again he's not going to turn it over, or hitting Miles Turner in the short roll, or whatever the case may be. Where when you're switching on Haliburton, one, that kind of takes away some of those extra reads that he is able to make, but at the same time, he's noticeably less aggressive. It's just switch, and we're just going to continually flow the offense, which. On one hand, I said Harden's probably the best quarterback of the offense in the league. I think Haliburton's like right there, if not better, in terms of just being a quarterback and setting the table for everybody. But the switching does kind of negate some of his aggressiveness, and you see it so many times, which makes it a little bit frustrating in a good way. I guess, where you have these moments of late game 5, and he gets a switch on Giannis and just goes at him, or you get the start of game 7 of the finals where he just comes out guns blazing. It's like, fam, do this all the time. So in a weird way, his lack of scoring aggression, I think, actually hurts him as a playmaker, because teams are going to invite him in these situations where, hey, look, we're just going to cut your water off, and can you be aggressive at attacking us downhill? And there's moments of it being a resounding yes, but I think those moments are too far in between to where I think that's enough, honestly, on top of Jokic just being like stupid. I think that's just enough to keep him from number 1.
That's fair, and I totally agree. That's the only thing keeping him from number 1 for me, is that like he isn't the same type of half-court scoring weapon that any of these guys we've really talked about are to some extent. Just in terms of like, but I do think he dispelled a lot of that in the playoffs. Like, I remember going into the playoffs, the talking points with Haliburton were basically that he's even going back. Let's go back to 2024 for a second. Do you remember when everyone was saying that like Haliburton is not a real playmaker and he just makes the pass to the open man and then like they create off of the pass, and they were saying Rondo assists and all that stuff? Like, Haliburton creates a lot. It's just very subtle. Let me counter one of your points though. Well, maybe not counter, but let me ask you this. Like, so I agree with you. I think the passiveness at times is alarming, but do you think also that can boost his playmaking at times because he's always looking for the very best possible offensive advantage? Like, it could be so subtle, but it could be like Haliburton will get a switch on a Mitchell Robinson, but then it's like, wait, I see Josh Hart's on Siakam. So instead of attacking my mismatch, I'm going to do everything I can to get the ball to the post. Like, I do think that's one thing Haliburton has over every other player in the league, is that he is always looking for the best possible outcome of a possession, like ahead of time. He's got like this, he can see 16 seconds into the future.
Yeah.
And be like,
he has a computer brain.
Right. He's like, wait, so if this screen happens and that screen happens, actually, instead of Mitch,
which
like
again,
Mitch
quarterback of the defense. Like,
right,
it's your
like
job as an NFL quarterback to,
exactly.
if they're in Tampa 2, then I have this. Or you're predetermining what's going to happen.
Yes. Exactly, because like, well, it's like maybe Haliburton's like, wait, I got Mitchell Robinson on me. Now they don't have a rim protector, so let's work our way to the paint on the other side, because now their rim protector's on me and he has to guard me because I'm a 40% 3-point shooter. Like, I do think Haliburton has a lot of plays like that kind of get uncredited just because he's always looking for the best possession in a way that, like, Luka will get a switch on a Mitchell Robinson. It's immediately in isolation, like clear out. We're going one-on-one. Same thing with Trey Young. But like, Haliburton's like, no, wait. What if we swing the ball 3 times? Then this guy cuts. Now we have a post up and we can get a layup out of this. And it's like, I do think Haliburton has a lot of that, of just such a smart player. Another thing with Haliburton is You already talked about the transition stuff. I don't think I need to get into that. He creates pace like no one else. The I think Jokic, Luka, and Trey are all more versatile passers than Haliburton. They can make
We've had this conversation.
different types of passes. I don't think there's a passer since like prime Chris Paul, maybe, that is more accurate than Tyrese Haliburton. When he makes a pass, it is going exactly where it was meant to go every time. You won't see any passes be even this much off target. If there's a shooter and Haliburton wants to get them the ball, it is in the pocket. The spin is perfect. They're catching it on the seams and they are shooting it. And it's like, that has such a boost on your team's offense that you don't really think about, where it's like that extra second or that extra like tenth of a second to get a corner three off in traffic or to attack a closeout just goes a long way. And I think that's kind of where I want to land the Haliburton train, is like every little subtle thing he does on the court, like whether it's getting off the ball quickly, whether it's the right extra swing pass when he's spotted up on the perimeter and Nembhard running the offense, every little thing he does in the court is so intentional and always improves the possession while not losing any possessions because of the turnovers. So I think Haliburton actually does have a pretty strong argument for number one. But if you were on the lower side on the half-court scoring, and maybe you think, like, I do think there's a fair point to make that Indiana's offensive talent probably makes Haliburton's playmaking look better than it would. Like, if Haliburton was in Atlanta, would he be able to do what Trey Young does? I don't know. We don't really know, but, like, could Trey Young do what Haliburton does with the Pacers? Again, I don't know. It's very tough. But, like, if you do think Indiana's offensive ecosystem and amount of ball handlers and decision makers boosts Haliburton's type of playmaking, I'd hear you out. And I think, but then again, like, 4 is the lowest I can see any of these guys.
Yeah. And one last thing about Haliburton, because I think Haliburton, and I've said, again, I sound like a broken record at this point, the quarterbacking of the offense, I think he's actually the perfect, like, analogy for an NFL quarterback. Because what you said, right? Like how, and again, we've kind of had this conversation in the past where, okay, Luka and Trey, some of the passes or types of passes that those guys might make or attempt to make are going to lead to higher turnovers or whatever, right? But I don't think it's necessarily that Haliburton can't make those passes. It's the difference between like a gunslinger and just a perfectly accurate quarterback.
Haliburton is Drew Brees.
Well, Drew Brees was kind of throwing that thing around. Pause. Oh my God.
You get what I'm saying though? Like, he's not turning the ball over. Like, it's getting where it needs to go every time.
Yeah, I was more so saying like Breeze has some high interception years, but still, like your point in general was
I'm a casual. So give me a better example. I'm an NFL casual. I thought Drew Brees had like 2 interception years. Am I tripping?
He did. He also had like 17 interception years.
Okay.
Better example. Better example. We'll go same exact team. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. Prime Aaron Rodgers. Accurate, one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time, can make every single throw, not turning the ball over. Brett Favre can also make every single throw, but he's going to have 20 interception seasons because he's trying to make every single tight window throw. It's not that Aaron Rodgers can't make those same throws. As a matter of fact, Aaron Rodgers can and consistently does in his prime. But he's not – I think he – and similarly to Haliburton, to your point, is probably the best, like, calculator of risk reward for every pass he makes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect way to end on Haliburton.
Yeah, and let's do the Jokic conversation. This should be pretty short and sweet. I think this guy as a post scorer, a Jokic post up is the most efficient half court scoring action in like 10 years. And he's also, in my opinion, the second best passer of all time. So that alone is like, if you get the ball in the post, send a double, don't. It doesn't matter. Someone's getting a good shot every possession. And then it's also like he's also got all of the off-ball playmaking. Like, he's maybe the best screener in the league. He's an elite cutter. You have to guard him. Opposing centers have to guard him 25 feet away from the basket, which then opens up the paint. Maybe my best example for that would be the Clippers series. Zubats was so occupied with following Jokic everywhere on the court, whether that was him running around a screen or him spotting up top or him just having the ball up top, that the Nuggets got a shot in the paint like every possession because the Clippers' only rim protector had to worry about the guy shooting 45% from threes, the 7-footer. And it's like Jokic causes so much havoc on and off the ball, and then is also, like I said, maybe the best screener and passer in the league. Can push pace, can play slow, can play on the ball, off the ball, can play the 5 or the 1. When it comes to improving the possession for your team, there's no one better than Jokic.
Yeah, and I think the other part that I'm going to also attribute to Jokic is the fact that where he's starting a lot of these possessions off at, one is a scorer. Like, he's starting a lot of these possessions off free throw line and in. So you're starting your possession off, okay, half the time, because they're going to run so much delay action and use them a lot as a screener, obviously. But half of your touches start off next to the basket, in theory, right? Mm-hmm. So you're already starting off with a massive advantage in terms of, efficiency and where your shots are coming from. But then you also add in the fact that he is one of the just flat out best passers of all time. Can make every single pass on the floor, can make any skip pass out of a double team. The fact that he's 7 foot and is this talented as a passer, I think one of the biggest things that helped him out this season, and we've talked about this a lot, is the fact that last season appears to be a fluke from the jump shooting. 2023-24 could not find the basket at all from 20 feet out. This season, he just happens to be a 40+% three-point shooter again, and then you just add that along with all the other stuff. The increase in aggression in terms of looking for a shot a little bit more while also still being this high-volume playmaker. Jokic is awesome. Again, make every pass. He's the man. He's still the best player on the planet. I love Shea. I love Shea more than the next guy. I hate that every time a new guy wins the ring, we have to have this new conversation about, is he the best player? No, Jokic is the best player and has been for probably 3 years now, maybe even 4, depending on how you feel about Giannis/Embiid. So, yeah, Jokic is... I sound so, monotone or, bored right now because Jokic... I thought Steph was the easiest conversation. I went second on Jokic. It's there's nothing else to say.
I will say, though, and this might be a hot take, I would hear someone out for having Jokic 4th. And it's literally... It would be the fact that all of the other 3 guys are just ball handlers, better bringing the ball up, initiators. Yeah. And you look at the OKC series, the switching and fronting the post, or that Lakers game we always bring up, that was kind of like the blueprint. You talked about Jokic starting possessions close to the basket. What if he can't get the ball close to the basket? He is he's still a great playmaker on the perimeter, and he can play off of ball screens. He can do that up top. Let's get into some screening action. I'll find the cutter or the shooter. But he is less effective starting from the top of the key than any of the other 3 guys we had in that top 4. So in terms of the inevitability of their playmaking, I think the other 3 guys are all more inevitable on the offense, if that makes sense.
I get what you're trying to say.
It's just that Jokic is still so versatile and still so good in so many ways that I still think he's a clear number 1 for me personally and what I value. But I would hear you out if you were no, the other guys are all ball handlers. They all start the offense. They don't need a point guard like Jamal Murray to then bring up the ball and get you in your correct spot. I would hear you out. I would hear you out.
All right, let's go over our top 10s.
Let's do it, man. Let's go ahead and share the screen. I got it ready this time. Don't have to delay it with some random yap. Talk to me.
All right, so I'm going to go 1 through 10, actually. I'm going to have 10 to 1.
Gotcha.
So tier 1 for me, I can basically see an argument for any of these guys being number 1. And I think we did a decent job at making an argument for said person to be number 1. Tier 1, Jokic, Tyrese Haliburton, Luka Doncic, and Trey Young. Tier 2 for me, which spans from 5 to 9, is Cade Cunningham, Steph Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, James Harden, and Jalen Brunson. And then Tier 3 is basically 10 through 14, Ja Morant, and then the other guys that I had mentioned beforehand, LeBron, Darius Garland, Damian Lillard, LaMelo Ball, etc.
Gotcha. So my top 10, I don't know if you caught the bad podcasting there. I accidentally started dragging things onto the screen while you're reading your list, but I think we're good. I had 1 Jokic, 2 Haliburton, 3 Luka, 4 Trey. That's same thing for me, top 4 tier. I think all of those guys have an argument for 1, and it's pretty cool that we ended up having them in the same order. I didn't think we would. But yeah, that's funny. Going into this, I was like, we're gonna have such different lists, and I'm looking at it now, and it's like we have damn near the same list.
Yeah, 5 through 10, there's a lot of parity. You have Brunson 5, I have Brunson 9, so there's a lot of differences there. But you get to the top 4, and I think it's pretty clear cut.
My 5 through 8 tier was Brunson, Shea, Steph, and Cade. And then my 9 through, we'll call it 14, was Harden, LeBron, and then Ja Morant, Garland, Lillard, LaMelo Ball. Also, we mentioned Giannis, Tatum, Mitchell, Booker, and you mentioned TJ McConnell for the drive stat. I feel like he's worthy of a mention here. Shout out Russell Westbrook. Shout out Sabonis, dribble handoffs.
Dribble handoff. Shout out Bam, Duncan Robinson, Gravity, 2-man game.
You know who else I actually like softly considered but didn't write down, and I was like, you know what, I could see him being here. Just off the regular season was Fred VanVleet. I was like, you know what, like VanVleet's another guy. You know, he only averaged like 1.3 turnovers or something crazy.
Yeah, Fred's awesome.
Despite averaging like 80 touches, it's absurd. It's absurd. But yeah, he's just like doesn't generate enough scoring pressure for me. But like in terms of just like, yeah, I'm gonna run the offense and we're gonna get a good shot every time. I think VanVleet is worthy of a mention. He'd maybe be like my number 20. I will say one more guy I kind of want to talk about real quick before we get out of here. This will kind of lead into our next. If you're still here, our next episode is going to be top 10 offensive players. So we're going to be combining the scoring and playmaking lists. We're going to be including things like offensive rebounding and off ball and all that stuff. And we're going to be crafting a top 10 offensive players list. And one guy I want to quickly talk about just while we're talking about playmaking that would have maybe been close to this discussion a couple of years ago, but just isn't anywhere near it anymore for me is Kevin Durant. I think that's a really interesting guy of like he generates so much pressure as a scorer and is also a pretty good passer, but the two don't really mesh in the same way they used to. So I think that'll be like that's a little teaser for our top 10 offensive players. I think that's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah.
The Kevin Durant stuff. And then
I think
even
I think KD's very clearly like the one guy out of anybody that's in consideration for that list that there's such a gap of where we had them at in their scoring in the scoring list versus where we had them at in on playmaking. Like, I think all the guys are guesstimating. I think all the guys that we've considered for the top, that we're going to consider for the top 10 offensive players, we've at the very least had a thought about them for the playmaking list. Or
You're
vice
right.
versa.
I just looked at it. I just looked at my top 10. Like all of them were either scorers or playmakers, and KD's the only one who was in my scorers list, and I didn't consider for the playmaking list.
Yeah, like didn't consider at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. Wow, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, we really appreciate you guys listening. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. If you're on Spotify or Apple, a 5-star rating is very, very much appreciated. Let us know down in the comments what your playmakers list would look like. I'm very curious, and also what your offensive players list would look like heading into our next episode. Make sure to follow us on social media. I'm on all platforms at Hoop Venue or Tyler Britton. Just look me up. You'll find me. Sean is on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. He's on Instagram at Sean_Davis23. He's on YouTube at The Sports Headline Show and the Los Angeles Lakers Network. Once again, we really appreciate you guys. Wait.
And with the Sports Headline Show, the preseason power ranking series is starting.
There we go.
So we're late. So 30 through 26 are going to be in one video, kind of run through those teams, and then we'll start off fresh with 25.
There we go. Love to hear it, man. Love to hear it. Back from the dead, Sports Headline Show. There we go. No, the power ranking series, I'm excited. I will be tapped in. You've also been dropping like some occasional Lakers videos. Like I saw you drop something with Marcus Smart when
the Luka extension.
You are a more consistent YouTuber than me right now. So
I am.
I haven't uploaded
I feel awful.
I haven't uploaded in over 2 weeks.
When was the last time I've uploaded?
I'm cooked, dude. I'm cooked. If you're watching this and you are waiting on a YouTube video, I'm so sorry.
I haven't uploaded in 4 days. Then before that, it was 2 days before that. Then before that, it was 11 days.
Dude, my last upload was July 20th.
So 16 days ago, 17 days ago, basically.
We're doing good, man. We're doing good. This is peak off-season stuff. No, I'm actually working on a big series that I will be announcing in a few weeks, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, like I said, we really appreciate you guys listening. Make sure to tune into the Power Ranking series over on the Sports Headline Show, and we'll catch you guys next time for episode 58.